The small town of Bayridge looked perfect on postcards. Waves crashed against rocky shores while seagulls circled overhead. Colorful houses lined streets that led to a town square where everyone seemed to know everyone else. This was exactly what Tom and Lily Chen wanted after years of living in the crowded city. Lily stood on their new porch, breathing in the salty air. At 35, she had finally reached a point in her career where her architecture firm allowed her to work remotely. The promotion had come after years of late nights and brilliant designs that caught the attention of important clients. "What do you think?" Tom asked, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. He was taller than Lily by a head, with quiet eyes that noticed everything. Most people described Tom as reserved, even shy. Few knew about his 15 years in military intelligence before he switched to private security consulting. "I think it's perfect," Lily said, leaning against him. "Just listen to that, nothing but waves and birds." Their house sat at the edge of town, a blue 2-story building with white trim and a garden that needed work. They had bought it for less than they expected, which should have been their first clue that something wasn't quite right in Bayridge. On moving day, neighbors brought cookies and casseroles. The town mayor, a man with 2 white teeth named Richard Powell, personally welcomed them. His wife Veronica smiled without it reaching her eyes. "We're so pleased to have a real architect in town," Veronica said, looking Lily up and down. "Though I imagine there's not much call for modern design in a traditional place like Bayridge." Tom noticed the slight before Lily did. He caught the way Veronica emphasized modern while looking at Lily's Asian features, but he said nothing, just watched and remembered. The first few weeks passed in a blur of unpacking and settling in. Lily set up her home office with a view of the ocean. Tom converted the garage into a workspace where he could take video calls with his security clients. They joined the local gym, found their favorite coffee shop, and started to feel like they belonged. Lily was thrilled when a local business owner asked her to design a new restaurant on the waterfront. "This could lead to more local projects," she told Tom over dinner. "I could build a portfolio right here in Bayridge." Tom smiled at his wife's excitement. After watching her work so hard in the city, often facing subtle discrimination, he was happy to see her confidence growing. Lily had always been the more social one, making friends easily while Tom preferred to stay in the background. What they didn't know was that Bayridge operated by unwritten rules. The Powell family had controlled local development for 3 generations. Richard's construction company built everything of importance, and his wife Veronica decided who was welcome in their social circles. Every morning, Tom jogged through town before sunrise. He noticed things, which lights were on at odd hours, which cars were parked where they shouldn't be, which houses had security and which didn't. Old habits from his military days never quite left him. 1 month after moving in, Lily came home confused. "The restaurant owner canceled our contract," she said. He wouldn't explain why, just said he was going in another direction. 3 days later, they weren't invited to the neighborhood block party. The following week, Lily overheard whispers at the grocery store that stopped when she rounded the corner. "Maybe we made a mistake moving here," Lily said one night, her usual confidence fading. "Something feels off." Tom wrapped his arms around her. "Give it time," he said. "New places take adjustment." But inside, Tom was watching and waiting. He recognized the signs of a community closing ranks. Someone had decided his wife wasn't welcome, and he needed to figure out why. What the people of Bayridge didn't realize was that the quiet man who lived in the blue house by the sea wasn't just some ordinary husband. They had no idea who they were messing with, or what would happen when they pushed too far. In the Powell mansion on the hill above town, plans were already being made to drive the newcomers away. "They simply don't fit in," Veronica told her husband. "That woman is already trying to change things with her modern ideas." Richard nodded in agreement, not knowing he had just set in motion events that would eventually destroy everything he had built. 3 months into living in Bayridge, Lily started noticing strange patterns. During her video meetings with the architecture firm, colleagues would say things like, "Oh no, that's similar to what Jim suggested last week," when she knew the ideas had been hers alone. Her boss, who had always praised her work, began questioning her designs more often. One rainy Tuesday, Lily sat staring at her computer screen, a half-empty cup of tea cold beside her. Tom came in and noticed her worried expression. "What's wrong?" he'd asked, pulling up a chair next to her. "I don't know," Lily sighed. "Maybe I'm imagining things, but it feels like work is different since we moved here. Like someone's working against me." What Lily didn't know was that she wasn't imagining anything. Veronica Powell had connections everywhere, including a cousin who worked at Lily's firm's headquarters. Small comments carefully placed doubts about Lily's commitment since moving away. It was all part of a plan. At the local coffee shop, Lily tried to make friends. She chatted with a woman named Beth who owned the bookstore across the street. They got along well until Beth suddenly became cold mid-conversation when Veronica Powell walked in. "I should get back to my shop," Beth mumbled, avoiding Lily's eyes. Later that week, Tom was buying groceries when he overheard two women talking in the next aisle. "I heard she lied about her qualifications," one whispered. "Veronica said her firm is just keeping her on out of pity." "And did you hear about her trying to steal the waterfront project? Richard was always going to develop that property." The nerve of these outsiders. Tom said nothing, just added items to his cart with steady hands. Inside, though, something cold and calculating was waking up, a part of himself he thought he'd left behind years ago. At home, Lily was becoming quieter. She jumped when her phone rang and checked her emails with growing anxiety. Local clients who had shown interest in hiring her privately suddenly stopped returning calls. "I got another cancellation today," Lily told Tom over dinner. "That's the third one this month. It's like someone's telling people not to work with me." Tom reached across the table and took her hand. "Have you tried talking to anyone in town about it?" "I tried speaking with the woman who runs the art gallery. She seemed uncomfortable, then finally said something about how newcomers need to understand how things work here before stepping on toes." The next day, Lily went to the local coffee shop and found herself receiving cold shoulders. The barista who had been friendly just weeks before now barely looked at her. A table of women went silent when she entered, then burst into obvious whispers. On her way home, Lily stopped at the small grocery store where the owner, an older man named Frank, had always been kind to her. "Frank," she asked quietly, "have I done something wrong? Everyone in town is suddenly treating me differently." Frank looked around nervously before leaning closer. "Look, I like you folks, but you need to understand. The Powells run this town. Veronica decides who fits in and who doesn't. Word is you tried to take business away from Richard with that waterfront project. But I was invited to bid on that project. I didn't know Richard wanted it." "Doesn't matter," Frank shrugged. "That's how they see it. My advice: either make peace with them or—" He didn't finish the sentence. That night, Lily told Tom everything. For the first time since they'd moved, she cried. "Maybe we should just leave," she whispered. "Start over somewhere else." Tom held her close, his face expressionless except for a muscle twitching in his jaw. "Let's give it a little more time," he said gently. "Things might change." What Lily didn't see was the look in Tom's eyes as he stared out the window toward the Powell mansion on the hill. It was the same look his former military teammates would have recognized, the one that appeared right before he solved a problem permanently. In her luxurious home, Veronica Powell smiled as she heard from her friends that the Chen woman had been seen crying. It wouldn't be long now before those outsiders got the message and left Bay Ridge for good. The Bay Ridge Spring Festival was the biggest event of the year. The whole town gathered in the main square, with food stalls, games, and a charity auction that raised money for the local school. Lily didn't want to go, but Tom insisted it would look worse if they hid away. "We have nothing to be ashamed of," he told her as they walked toward the crowded square. Lily wore a simple blue dress that matched the color of their house, while Tom stayed in his usual plain clothes that somehow never drew attention to him. The whispers followed them as they moved through the crowd. Mothers pulled their children closer, as if the Chens carried something contagious. Men who had previously been friendly to Tom suddenly found their shoes fascinating. At the center of it all stood Veronica Powell in an expensive designer outfit, holding court like a queen. Her husband Richard stood beside her, his hand resting possessively on her lower back as they chatted with the town's doctor and his wife. "I need a drink," Lily whispered to Tom. "I'll be right back." As she walked toward the drink table, she overheard Veronica's voice, deliberately louder than necessary. Of course, we had to go with a proper architectural firm from the city. Can you imagine trusting something as important as the waterfront development to someone with such questionable credentials? I heard her previous employers were quite relieved when she left. Something snapped inside Lily. Months of isolation and whispers had worn her down, but this direct attack on her professional reputation was too much. Before Tom could stop her, she walked straight up to Veronica. "Excuse me," Lily said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I couldn't help overhearing you talk about my credentials. I'd like to know exactly what you think is questionable about them." The crowd around them went silent. Veronica's perfect smile faltered for just a moment before returning, colder than before. "Oh, hello, dear. We were just discussing the waterfront project. Business talk, nothing personal." "It sounded personal to me," Lily pressed. "Especially the part about my former employers being relieved when I left." Richard Powell stepped forward, his broad shoulders meant to intimidate. "My wife was simply stating facts. The waterfront development needs experienced local oversight. It's nothing against you personally." "Then why," Lily asked, her voice growing stronger, "have you been telling people not to work with me? Why are local clients canceling appointments after speaking with you or your wife?" A few people in the crowd shifted uncomfortably. Tom stood back, watching everything with careful eyes. Veronica laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "My dear, if people choose not to work with you, perhaps that's a reflection of your abilities, not my influence. Though I do advise my friends on who might be reliable." "The waterfront project was awarded to my firm because our design was better," Lily said. "That's why you're doing this, isn't it? Because for once you didn't get your way." Richard's face darkened. "You'd better watch your tone. You're new here. You don't understand how things work in Bayridge." "Oh, I understand perfectly," Lily replied. "You're used to controlling everything and everyone. When someone doesn't bow to your wishes, you bully them out of town." The mayor stepped forward, clearly uncomfortable. Now, let's all calm down. This is supposed to be a celebration." "There's nothing to celebrate about how you've treated my wife," Tom said, speaking for the first time. His quiet voice somehow carried more weight than Richard's bluster. On the drive home, Lily felt both relieved and terrified. "I shouldn't have confronted her like that," she said. "Things will only get worse now." She was right. The next morning, they woke to find their mailbox smashed. 2 days later, someone left garbage scattered across their front lawn. Lily's cart was keyed in the grocery store parking lot with the word "Levy" scratched into the paint. When they reported these incidents to the local police, Officer Wilson just shrugged. "No witnesses, no cameras, not much we can do." As they left the police station, Tom noticed Wilson immediately picking up the phone, likely calling Richard Powell. That night, as Lily fell into troubled sleep, Tom sat at the kitchen table, his laptop open. On the screen was a document titled "Powell Family, Financial Holdings and Vulnerabilities." The quiet man's research had already begun. The breaking point came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Tom was working in his home office when he heard a crash from upstairs. He raced up to find Lily on the bathroom floor, her breathing rapid and shallow, tears streaming down her face. I can't breathe," she gasped, clutching at her chest. Tom recognized the signs of a severe anxiety attack immediately. He'd seen similar reactions in his military days when stress became too much for even the strongest people. Without wasting a moment, he carried her to the car and drove to Bayridge General Hospital. The emergency room doctor, a woman who had recently moved to town and didn't yet know the local politics, ran tests and kept Lily overnight for observation. "Her blood pressure is dangerously high," the doctor told Tom privately. "Has she been under unusual stress lately?" Tom nodded, his face giving away nothing of the rage building inside him. "You could say that." Late that night, while Lily finally slept with the help of medication, Tom picked up her phone to call her boss about taking time off. What he found made his blood turn cold. Dozens of messages from unknown numbers filled her inbox. "Leave town while you still can. No one wants you here. Your husband can't protect you forever." Tom scrolled through message after message, each one worse than the last. His hands didn't shake, his breathing remained steady. Anyone watching would have thought he was reading a shopping list, not threats against his wife. The next morning, Tom took the messages to the police station and asked to file a report. Officer Wilson barely glanced at the phone. "Look, these are just anonymous texts, probably kids playing pranks. Nothing we can do unless there's a specific threat." "There are dozens of threatening messages here," Tom said quietly. Wilson handed the phone back. "Best thing you and your wife can do is try to fit in better. Or maybe consider if Bay Ridge is the right place for you." Tom nodded as if considering this advice. "Who exactly should we be fitting in with, Officer Wilson?" "The people who vandalized our property were the ones who sent these messages." The officer's face hardened. "I'd be careful about making accusations without proof." "I'm always careful," Tom replied, his voice soft but somehow filling the room. For a brief moment, something in his tone made Wilson uncomfortable, though he couldn't explain why. That evening, Tom sat in the hospital parking lot after visiting hours ended. He opened a battered metal box he retrieved from their basement. Inside were things from his past life: secure phones, small electronic devices, and a notebook with codes rather than words. He made 3 calls to numbers he hadn't dialed in years. "I need help," was all he said, followed by a string of code words that meant something only to the people on the other end. When Lily was released from the hospital the next day, Tom took her to a small bed and breakfast 2 towns over. "Just for a few days," he explained. "You need rest without worrying about what might happen next." "What about our house?" Lily asked, still pale and shaky. "I'll take care of everything," Tom promised, kissing her forehead. "Focus on getting better." What Lily didn't know was that while she recovered, their quiet home in Bay Ridge was transforming into something else entirely. The garage Tom had used as his office was now filled with computer equipment. 3 people, 2 men and a woman, worked inside, each of them with the same watchful eyes as Tom. None of them spoke much, but when they did, it was with the shorthand of people who had worked dangerous assignments together. "Target profiles complete," said the woman, pushing a folder across the table to Tom. "Financial records, communications, personal habits, everything you asked for." Tom opened the folder to reveal detailed information about the Powells and their closest allies. "Thank you. Phase 1 begins tonight." In her luxurious home, Veronica Powell was celebrating what she saw as her victory. The troublesome newcomer had been hospitalized and now appeared to have left town. She had no idea that in the quiet blue house by the sea, the real battle was just beginning. The morning started like any other for Bill Green, Richard Powell's accountant. He opened his mailbox and found a thick manila envelope with no return address. Inside was a stack of papers showing transfers from Powell Development to offshore accounts. Transactions Bill himself had helped set up but never fully understood. Paperclipped to the front was a note. "The IRS might find these interesting. So might your wife." Across town, Veronica Powell's closest friend, Helen, sat frozen at her kitchen table. Her laptop screen displayed emails between her husband and his 20-something assistant planning their next hotel meetup. Helen had no idea who sent the emails to her or how anyone had accessed her husband's private account. By noon, 4 members of the town council had received similar packages. Each contained different information, but all revealed secrets their owners desperately wanted kept hidden. No threats were made. No demands were stated. Just information precisely delivered to cause maximum damage. At the local radio station, DJ Pete Wilson was startled when his computer suddenly began playing a recording of Officer Wilson, the policeman, talking to Richard Powell. "Don't worry about the Chen woman's complaints. I'll make sure nothing comes of it." Pete quickly shut it off, looking around nervously as if someone might be watching. Tom sat at a coffee shop 2 towns over, near the bed and breakfast where Lily was resting. His laptop open, he watched activity across multiple screens while sipping his drink. The woman who had arrived at his house 2 days earlier sat across from him. "Phase 1 is complete," she said quietly. "Information drops delivered. No traces back to us." Tom nodded. "How's the digital site coming?" "We've mapped their entire network. Full access to emails, text messages, financial records. The Powell family has made a lot of enemies over the years. People were surprisingly willing to talk once we knew what questions to ask." Tom's phone buzzed with a text from one of his other colleagues. "Town council meeting tonight. All targets will be present." "I need to check on Lily," Tom said, closing his laptop. Then I have a meeting to attend. At the bed and breakfast, Lily was looking better. Some color had returned to her cheeks, and she smiled when Tom entered the room. The doctor called, she told him. My blood pressure is down. She thinks I can go home tomorrow. Tom sat beside her on the bed. That's great news. How would you feel about coming to the town council meeting with me tonight? Lily's smile faded. Why would we go there? Those people hate us. Trust me, Tom said, taking her hand. Things are changing in Bay Ridge. I think you'll want to see this. That evening, the town hall was unusually crowded. Everyone sensed something was happening, though no one could say exactly what. An undercurrent of nervous energy filled the room as Richard Powell called the meeting to order. First item on the agenda, Richard began, his voice carrying the same confident authority it always had. The waterfront development. Actually, interrupted Bill Green, standing up shakily, I need to address something first. Richard frowned. That's not on the agenda, Bill. It can't wait, Bill insisted, his voice cracking. I need to publicly disclose some financial irregularities I've discovered in the Powell development accounts. The room went completely silent. Richard's face turned red. Sit down, Bill. We can discuss this privately. Several council members received concerning information today, added Councilwoman Jones, normally Richard's loyal supporter. I think we need transparency here. From the back of the room, Tom and Lily watched as confusion spread across Veronica Powell's perfectly made-up face. For the first time in years, she wasn't controlling the conversation. When Officer Wilson entered the hall, several people moved away from him. Someone had anonymously uploaded the recording of his conversation with Richard to the town's community Facebook page just minutes before. What the hell is happening? Veronica hissed to her husband as more people stood up, each with questions about different Powell family dealings. Tom leaned close to Lily's ear. Justice, he whispered. This is just the beginning. The days following the town council meeting brought a wave of change through Bay Ridge. People who had avoided the Chens for months suddenly found reasons to say hello. The local coffee shop owner offered Lily free drinks. Even the mailmen, who had previously dumped their mail carelessly, now carefully placed it in their repaired mailbox. Lily noticed the change but couldn't understand it. Why is everyone being nice to us now? She asked Tom over breakfast. People follow power, Tom replied simply, and the Powells are losing theirs. What Lily didn't know was that Tom's careful work continued day and night. His team had set up a system that monitored every electronic device in the Powell household. Every email, every text, every search, all of it flowed back to Tom's garage command center. Veronica Powell sat in her living room, clutching a glass of wine, though it was barely noon. Her phone had been ringing nonstop with friends canceling lunch dates and charity committee members resigning their positions. Everything she had built over 20 years was crumbling, and she couldn't understand why. We need to fight back, Richard insisted, pacing across their expensive carpet. Someone is targeting us. It has to be those newcomers. How? Veronica snapped. That quiet husband. He barely talks to anyone. And she's been hiding since her breakdown. She made air quotes around the last word. I don't know how they're doing it, but Richard stopped mid-sentence as their smart TV suddenly turned on by itself. On screen appeared a video of Richard meeting with building inspectors, clearly showing money changing hands. Then another clip of Veronica spreading rumors about the previous town doctor who had moved away after she decided he wasn't right for Bay Ridge. What's happening? Veronica screamed, dropping her wine glass. The TV changed channels by itself, flipping through more recordings of their private conversations. Someone's hacked our system, Richard said, frantically trying to turn off the TV. But when he unplugged it, their phones started playing the same videos. When they turned off their phones, their computers booted up on their own. At the police station, Officer Wilson found his email had been accessed overnight. Every complaint he had buried for the Powells over the years had been forwarded to the state police headquarters with detailed notes. The hardware store owner who had refused to sell supplies to Tom discovered his tax returns from the past 5 years posted on the bulletin board in his back office, the years when he had reported only half his actual income. Fear spread through the Powell circle as they realized they were dealing with someone who could access everything they thought was private. Attempts to retaliate against the Chens were met with immediate consequences. When Richard tried to call a business associate about applying pressure on Lily's architecture firm, he found his phone would only dial the FBI's financial crimes hotline. At the local bank, the manager who had helped Richard hide questionable transactions opened his computer to find every file replaced with copies of those same transactions, ready to be printed. Through it all, Tom maintained his normal routine. He visited the gym, shopped for groceries, and took Lily out for dinner. His face revealed nothing, but he made a point of saying hello to everyone in the Powell circle, always asking seemingly innocent questions about their businesses or families that somehow left them pale and shaking. "Did you hear about the Powells?" The grocery store clerk whispered to Lily. "They tried to leave town yesterday, but their car wouldn't start. Then their credit cards were declined at the hotel in the next town over. It's like something out of a horror movie." Lily glanced at Tom, who was calmly selecting apples nearby. "That's unfortunate," she said. That evening, Lily found Tom sitting on their porch, watching the sunset over the ocean. "Are you doing something to help our situation?" she asked carefully. Tom took her hand. "Let's just say I'm letting people see the truth about the Powells. Truth has a way of changing things." "Is it legal?" she pressed. Tom smiled slightly. "I never break laws. I just make sure information finds its way to the right people." Across town, Veronica Powell lay awake, jumping at every sound. She was beginning to believe her house was haunted, or worse, that the quiet man in the blue house somehow saw everything. 6 months passed, and Bay Ridge had transformed. The Powell mansion stood empty, a for sale sign swinging in the coastal breeze. Richard and Veronica had left town 3 months earlier after Richard was indicted for tax fraud and bribery. The hasty departure came after anonymous tips led federal investigators to offshore accounts and evidence of years of corruption. On Main Street, new businesses were opening. The waterfront project was moving forward, but now with input from a community board rather than under the control of a single family. Officer Wilson had been replaced by a new police chief from out of town who took every complaint seriously, regardless of who made it. Lily sat at her drawing table in her home office, working on designs for the new community center. Her phone rang with clients calling almost daily now. The architect who had been bullied out of town was now the most sought-after designer in the region. "Another call from Portland," she told Tom as he brought her lunch. "They want me to design a new library." Tom smiled. "Aren't you interested?" "Maybe," she said. "But I like working here now. Things have changed." What most people in town didn't understand was exactly how those changes had happened. They knew the Powells had faced legal troubles and left in disgrace. They knew that several town officials had resigned after evidence of wrongdoing surfaced. But no one could explain the precise chain of events that had brought down a power structure decades in the making. When new residents asked about the Chens, they received curious responses. "Lily's an amazing architect," people would say. "And Tom? He's quiet. Works from home. Good neighbor." But those who had been part of the Powell inner circle had different reactions. The hardware store owner, who had once refused to sell to Tom, now broke into a nervous sweat whenever Tom entered his shop. Former Councilwoman Jones crossed the street rather than walk past the Chen's blue house. No one ever spoke openly about why. At the bed and breakfast on the edge of town, the 3 people who had helped Tom months earlier were finishing their breakfast. Their work in Bay Ridge was complete, all traces of their operation removed. "Will we see you again?" the woman asked Tom as they loaded their car. "Hopefully not professionally," Tom replied with a small smile. "But you're always welcome for dinner." As they drove away, Tom walked back home along the beach. The garage that had briefly served as a command center was now just a garage again. The equipment was gone, the monitored networks shut down. The only thing left was a single secure laptop with files Tom kept for insurance. That evening, as they prepared dinner together, Lily finally asked the question she'd been holding back. "What exactly did you do to the Powells?" Tom chopped vegetables calmly. "I just make sure they face the consequences of their own actions." "People in town are afraid of you," she said. "Not everyone, but those who are close to the Powells. They look at you differently." "Are you afraid of me?" Tom asked. Lily shook her head immediately. "Never, but I want to understand." Tom put down his knife and faced his wife. I have skills from my previous career that are useful in certain situations. I didn't hurt anyone. I just made sure the truth came to light in ways it couldn't be ignored. And your friends who stayed at the bed and breakfast? Former colleagues, they owed me favors. Lally thought about this as she stirred the pasta sauce. Will you ever need to use those skills again? Tom pulled her close and kissed her forehead. Only if someone threatens what I love. That night, they sat on their porch swing watching the stars appear over the ocean. The town below them was peaceful. From a distance came the sound of laughter from the reopened beach restaurant. I think we made the right choice moving here, Lally said, leaning against her husband's shoulder. I think so too, Tom agreed, his arm around her. A car drove slowly past their house. The driver, a new resident who knew nothing of the town's recent history, waved cheerfully. The Chens waved back. In Bay Ridge, most people now knew the Blue House by the Sea as the home of a talented architect and her quiet husband who volunteered at the Veterans Center on weekends. But a few knew it as the place where they learned an important lesson: never underestimate a quiet man who loves his wife.